Girls, please be quiet. We are about to begin our program. And please sit down, girls at the back. A very good morning to all of you present here, respected Principal Madam, our Honorable Speaker of the Day, Dr. Aneek Chatterjee, our esteemed guests, my dear colleagues and students. We are gathered here today to carry forward the AmritKaal Vimarsh lecture series. AmritKaal is our Honorable Prime Minister's vision for India in 2047, a developed India or a Viksit Bharat, a new dawn which will bring with it the chance to fulfill people's aspirations. The Panch Pran or the 5 fundamentals of AmritKaal include the goal of developing India, eliminating traces of a colonial mindset, honor and pride in our roots, development of unity and duty among citizens. AmritKaal Vimarsh, Viksit Bharat at 2047 is a lecture series that is being organized and conducted by the ICSSR in colleges and universities. This has been a part of public policy initiatives over the past few years as we dream of a Viksit Bharat or an emerging India as a developed nation by 2047. Several public policy initiatives have been undertaken over the years aimed at the transformation of our country into a developed economy. One of several such policy initiatives has been the organizing of lectures to think and discuss contemporary issues and themes in the campuses of our academic institutions. The AmritKaal Vimarsh initiative is basically a vision, well balanced and planned, which aims to lay a roadmap for India's bright future by nurturing new possibilities and realizing new resolutions. In continuing with this AmritKaal Vimarsh series, it gives me great pleasure today to welcome our Honorable Speaker for the day, Dr. Aneek Chatterjee. I would now like to request our speaker and our principal, Professor Shuli Shorkar, to please come up on stage and take their seats. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. We would now like to felicitate our speaker, Dr. Aneek Chatterjee, as well as our principal, madam, Professor Shuli Shorkar. To do so, I call my colleagues on stage, Ms. Lamu Bhutia and Ms. Chitra Roy. Thank you, Lamu. Thank you, Chitra. I would now like to request our principal, Professor Shuli Shorkar, to deliver the welcome address.
Respected Speaker, Dr. Aneek Chatterjee, Senior Expert in International Relations, our eminent guests and dignitaries, my esteemed colleagues, and our beloved students. A very good afternoon to you all. It's a wonderful occasion when Lady Vimarsh College, in collaboration with Indian Council of Social Science Research, ICSSR, is organizing a one-day lecture on AmritKaal Vimarsh, Viksit Bharat at 2047, that is discussion on Immortality period, advanced India in 2047. India achieved independence in the year 1947. After a span of 100 long years, what would be its development pattern, or how would it advance? I'm sure I'm not going to be physically present in 2047 to see my motherland, but I'm equally sure that many of you present here today will survive till 2047 and after. By 2047, I'm sure that our country will be among the developed countries, said our Honorable Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi. But can the light of development reach the poorest of the poor? In this regard, I just can't resist myself from quoting Tagore, who in his famous essay, Bilashe Fanche, of the book, very well known and well read book, Shamaj, had written as long back as in 1905, সমস্ত শরীরকে প্রতারণা করিয়া কেবল মুখেই যদি রক্ত সঞ্চার হয় তবে তাহাকে স্বাস্থ্য বলা যায় না. That is polycythemia, which means too much redness in the face, depriving other parts of the body suffering from acute anemia, is surely not a mark of good health. Hence, how efficiently and effectively India will be able to combat inequality is a $1,000 question. How peaceful will be our nation in 2047, both internationally and in the domestic sphere? And at the same time, as principal of a girls' college for a period of past more than 12 years, almost 13 years, I'm equally concerned with the status of women, whether gender disparity will decrease or, if not, disappear totally. We are all concerned with these questions. No, I'm not going to linger my speech anymore. After all, I'm not the speaker today, and we are all eagerly waiting to hear from our resource person today, Dr. Chatterjee. And I'm pretty certain that after his talk is over, there will be lots and lots of questions coming from the members of the audience, and lots of their probable answers too are to be provided by our speaker today, or resource person. And at the end of the talk, I'm equally certain that everybody present here will feel more and more enriched and more enlightened. Everybody will be able to know a lot more new things and a lot more new ways of explaining them. I wish this ICSSR-sponsored one-day talk a grand success. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Before I hand over the microphone to our esteemed speaker, Dr. Aneek Chatterjee, or Aneek Da for us, it is my pleasure and my duty to introduce him to everyone present here in a few quick sentences. Dr. Aneek Chatterjee is a senior academic and analyst in international politics. He has authored and edited 16 academic and literary books. He has published more than 100 articles and book chapters in reputed journals and edited volumes. Dr. Chatterjee won a Fulbright visiting professor at the Center for South Asian Studies, University of Virginia, USA. He also received the prestigious ICSSR chair from the Government of India in International Relations for teaching in reputed foreign universities. His notable publications include International Relations Today, concepts and applications now taught in more than 500 universities across the globe. Neighbors, Major Powers and Indian Foreign Policy is another notable publication of Dr. Chatterjee. It is also taught across universities in South Asia and the world. His book in the Bengali vernacular, Thanda Juddher Por Antarjatik Somporko, International Relations After the Cold War, is a referred text in many universities in West Bengal, Assam and Tripura. Dr. Chatterjee has contributed academic articles in journals published by the University of Oxford, Villanova, University USA, Institute of Business and Technology Pakistan, Guru Nanak Dev University India, Jadavpur University, among others. Dr. Chatterjee is currently the head of the Department of Political Science at Sister Nivedita Government General Degree College for Girls in Kolkata, India. Earlier, he served as professor and head of political science at Presidency University, erstwhile Presidency College, Kolkata, India. He has delivered more than 250 professional lectures in 16 countries all over the world. He currently sits in the editorial boards of 3 reputed international academic journals. Aneek, I now welcome Dr. Aneek Chatterjee on stage. I request Principal Shri Bharat to please sit with the audience.
A very good morning to all of you. Thank you. I take this opportunity to thank the principal of this hallowed institution, my friend, Professor Shiuli Sarkar, for inviting me to deliver this lecture. Thanks are due to Dr. Trijita Gonzalez and other faculty members of the Department of Political Science, faculty members of other departments, where I find many friends with whom I worked in different colleges, and of course, beloved students of this college for joining this seminar. I am overjoyed by the presence of my classmates in Presidency College who have come all the way from different parts to hear an old friend. Thank you, lovely classmates, Nandita, Sharbani, Shobhoshachi, accompanied by his daughter Shohini, Snehashish, Anirban, and his wife Manoshi. Thank you for coming, and it's sort of a reunion for us. Although I feel overjoyed, but at the same time, overjoyed because my classmates have come, but at the same time I am a bit nervous with the presence of all these good students and brilliant minds in those golden days of Presidency College. Well, the principal has requested me to talk for an hour. A request from the principal is an order for me. So I will stick to the time limit, and I'll try to finish by an hour. If I finish early, I have requested the principal, we can prolong the question answer session a bit. Now the topic for today's discussion, as you all know, it's under the broader title, AmritKaal Vimarsh and Viksit Bharat 2047. So my title of my presentation today is where we are heading. India in 2047, projections and possibilities. Now, where do we see India in 2047? Just when we will celebrate the 100 years of our independence. Well, I am an optimistic person. I see India in a very bright light. I see India progressing much and taking its proper place in global politics, global economy. You know, my specialized area is international relations. So I always think, where will India stand, say, some 20, 25 years from now? So, as I said, I see a bright future for India, but I am also aware of the constraints. Now, I begin with some economic facts. I mean the economy of the country, because as we all know, economy is the backbone of any nation. So, over the last 3 decades, I have a lot of data and statistics with me. Over the last few decades, the GDP in real terms, in an average, it has been growing at around 6.5 from, if I say, definitely during the last 2 decades, from 2000 to the present. And as you know, the turnaround started after our economic liberalization. Just to remind you, many of the learned faculty members here, they are aware of this fact. But just to remind you that from 47 till, I would say, 1990s, before the economic liberalization, the average real GDP growth rate hovered around 2.5 to 3.5. But after economic liberalization, it gained momentum, and since then, it started to go up. But the point is, as my friends in the economics department know very well, that there are other facets of the GDP growth. Per capita income is very important. But this growth, it is not negligible. In the year, I can remember, in the year 1995, the US Commerce Department, they branded India as an emerging market. That is, 28 years ago, US branded India as an emerging market, and since then, the West, the Western European countries and the broader West, USA, Canada and several other nations, they looked up to India. And foreign investment also increased. Foreign investment started to pour in. And there was a happy picture all around. And as I said, I will talk about a few reports by international agencies to substantiate the issue that India has been growing. The first report, it was published a few years ago, around 2018 by the London-based PricewaterhouseCoopers, and it predicted that India will overtake the USA to become the second top economy in the world in 2050, after China. On the basis of GDP at purchasing power parity, GDP PPP, the report placed India, a bit earlier, the report placed India at the third position. But in 2017-2018, it placed India in the second position, around 2050, around 2050. So this is a report from a non-government organization, from a private organization, and of course a reputed organization. So we can take note of that. And another report I will talk about, it's a global firepower. Every year, this organization, they bring out a report every year on the military ranking. I mean, it's global firepower, as the name suggests. Now in 2023, the report has just come out. It placed India fourth militarily. Let me remind you, it's about non-conventional weapons. Fourth military power in the world after USA, China and Russia. And India has been retaining this fourth position for a long time. I follow these reports because for my research, for my writings. So India has been placed continuously in these reports in the fourth position. That is again very optimistic. Now, if we look at these reports, we may hope that India will gain a substantial place, a substantial position in global politics and economy. But as we students of international relations know, that the measurement of national power does not really depend on economy or military only. These are crucial factors, but does not depend only on them. There are several other factors for the measurement of national power. A nation's power actually depends on many other attributes like geography, economy, of course military capability, industrial and technological development, leadership, political stability, demographic issues, etc. So it is improper to go for a study of national power calculations without taking into account all these factors. However, as we all know, economy and military strength, they are important and they will remain important at all times. Now I talked about the growth of Indian economy. I will try to put emphasis on some other issues which are not much discussed in our discipline. Maybe in economics it is discussed, but there are constraints, I told you, but we must look forward. We must look forward to a better future. As an individual looks forward to his or her better future, a country also looks forward to its better future. Now, India must walk the way to become a manufacturing country. Currently, Indian economy is more reliant on the service sector. The contribution of service sector to our economy is 55% GVA, gross value added, 55% contribution of the service sector to the economy. Whereas the manufacturing sector contributed only 29% of GVA in 2021. There is nothing wrong in the development and growth of the service sector, but the contribution of manufacturing sector to the overall growth of Indian economy is equally important. The success of Indian service sector is noteworthy. India has become one of the largest exporters of information, computer and telecommunication services. And these services have been crucial for productivity growth. India now needs to realize its potential in manufacturing. It has a good climate, abundance of raw materials, and labor force. But manufacturing sector in India is presently constrained by the small scale of production, a bit low productivity, sometimes trade restrictions, although we are coming out of such restrictions in a big manner, and sometimes again infrastructural gaps. These bottlenecks need to be cleared for India to emerge as a manufacturing power. The country must also aim to become a global hub for manufacturing, like China has become earlier, and Vietnam has emerged in the recent past. So my point is that service sector and manufacturing must be balanced, must go hand in hand. And if we develop the manufacturing sector, it will also go well with the Atmanirbhar Bharat project of our Prime Minister and the Make in India policies. So manufacturing an area we should put more emphasis on. That is my humble submission. Now there are a few other issues I will talk about. Now, if possible, move away from primary producing economy. I am now concentrating on economy. I will come to other areas later. Now, move away, if possible, as far as possible, from a primary producing economy, which means move away from over-dependence on agriculture. I know India has been an agricultural country for long, but over-dependence on agriculture, that makes sometimes your productivity slow, as far as we know. So move away from gradually. That does not mean that agricultural sector has to be, ignored. What I'm putting emphasis on that India must come out of a primary producing economy, and India must come out of its over-dependence on agriculture. And another area I will put emphasis on, that is global trade. Now, India's share of global trade is not very noteworthy. It's around a bit lower than 2%, India's share in global trade. But at the same time, India is well placed. As per the last reports, in global trade, India's position is 13th, 1-3. So India must try to move up and within the top 10 bracket in global trade, and gradually within the top 5 bracket in global trade. Because the countries with the major power or big power tag, they are all very strong in global trade. Their presence in global trade is very strong. Let me give a bit of statistics. I personally don't like statistics, but sometimes it is essential. Now, US's share, America's share in global trade is around 10.5%. China's share hovers around 10.4, sometimes 10.6% of global trade. Whereas if we look at India, it is still 2%. So this is an area where we can build up. And I will later come. There are areas, as a student of international relations, I know, there are areas where India can really bolster its foreign trade. I will specify those areas. Currently our trade is much with USA, with China, despite political differences. Currently our trade is, and West European countries. But there are other countries with whom we can really strengthen our foreign trade, and thereby we can have more share in global trade. I will identify those areas shortly. And another area which is crucial. Now, there is no denying the fact that India wants to be a big power. There is no denying the fact. We have been following the trend. At one point of time, Indian foreign policy was a bit shy in saying that, yes, I want to be a big power. But the turnaround came later on. And Indian foreign policy started saying that, yes, I can do, I will do, I want to be a big power. So there is no shying away from saying that we can be a big power. Now, if you want to be a big power, you have to do certain things. Just we can't say we want to be a big power and we will be a big power. As I pointed out a few things in the economy, I will now specify other areas. Now, one crucial area for India to emerge as a big power is maritime security. Maritime security is very crucial for India. It is an area which is, as I said, which is very important. Now, safeguarding and securing the sea routes, our sea routes, for enhanced trade and for countering adversaries are of immense importance. In this context, it is important to recall that the perpetrators who masterminded the 26/11 attacks on the Indian commercial city of Mumbai, they came through sea routes. Therefore, India must develop a strategic vision of maritime security. This strategic vision will focus more on the Indian Ocean, the Indo-Pacific region. Nowadays, we call it even not only Indian Ocean, the Indo-Pacific region. An important Indian Ocean is always an important sea route for global trade. Currently, India defines its maritime security as per the Home Ministry's annual report, which is the area where India can strengthen maritime security. Currently, India defines its maritime security as extending from the Gulf of Hormuz in West Asia to the Straits of Malacca in Southeast Asia, as outlined, as I said, in the Ministry of Defense annual report, not Ministry of Home, Ministry of Defense annual report. This large maritime zone provides some of the world's busiest sea routes for mercantile trade. Control of this maritime zone by any single power may prove to be detrimental for India's national interests, as this maritime zone is crucial for India's economic growth and prosperity, and China is eyeing this zone. So, needless to say here that India's strategic vision of maritime security must include developing a world-class navy to safeguard country's interests in the Indian Ocean region. The need of the hour is to modernize Indian Navy with sophisticated equipments and ammunitions and bring it at par with world's advanced naval forces, and we are moving in that direction, I can tell you. The Indian Navy must be very quick to respond to any crisis in any part of sea waters around the globe, not only in our neighborhood. We must be prepared, our Navy must be prepared to quick actions in any part of the globe. By that we say a modern Navy should be prepared to take action in any part of the globe, not just in its neighborhood. So, as pointed out, the Indian Ocean region and broadly the Indo-Pacific is very crucial for India's ambitions, for India's economy, for India's move towards a big power tag. So, I identify this crucial area, the maritime security. We, students of international relations, sometimes we discuss the importance of maritime security. Indian Army has been strong since 1971 when we won that war. But of late, Indian Navy is becoming strong, which is very crucial because on three sides we have seas. As you know, we are a peninsula. So, Navy must be strengthened. Now I will talk about the areas I hinted earlier. India must strengthen its global engagements in foreign policy. By global engagements, I mean that India must nurture areas which have been previously neglected. And this is an era of economic diplomacy. Gone are the days of, ideological foreign policy, that, well, you are my friend, I am your friend, fine, hum log brothers hai, we are bhai bhai. So, now economic diplomacy is important. How much you are importing from me? How much I am exporting to you? This is important. And economic diplomacy can only go up through global engagements. Now I will identify some areas which I hinted earlier, where India can really bolster its engagements, political engagements, and of course foreign trade, economic engagements. One area is nearer home, that is Central Asia. We talk about Central Asia frequently. But why the 5 countries in Central Asia, they border China and Pakistan, many of them. They border China and Pakistan. We don't have direct access to them. We have to go to Central Asian regions, either through Afghanistan or through Pakistan. Not very politically not very conducive at this moment. But Central Asia, you know, as many students of international relations we know, it has enormous possibilities. And these are new nations, disintegrated from the earlier Soviet Union. And they are rich in minerals, in oil, in natural gas, things which are crucial today. And they have been on friendly terms with India for long, when they were under Soviet Union. So we must increase our foreign trade with these nations singularly, either singularly, or as a region of Central Asia. Now, I again have data with me, but I won't bore you with those data. Our foreign trade with Central Asia is a bit low compared to, as I said, USA, China, or West European countries. So Central Asia, one area, the Latin America and the Caribbeans. Another area, with these nations we have good friendly terms, we already have. But our foreign trade, our economic diplomacy with these nations must be, you know, really, really strengthened. If I again give you data or statistics, you can feel that with these regions, our foreign trade is a little behind. So, Latin America and the Caribbean, and some economy in Latin America, let me tell you, are doing very well. Mexico, for example, to some extent, Argentina, and the Caribbean countries, they are looking towards, you know, foreign investment. We know those countries for cricketing reasons, West Indies, but these countries are separate, the Caribbean nations, and they are looking for investment, and they are also inviting investment. So this is another area we can move ahead with, our foreign trade. And I will talk about two other nations, developed nations, in terms of economy, Australia and New Zealand. With these two nations, again, our political relations is very friendly, very good. I have done some work on Australia, India-Australia relations. Excellent relations for a long time. But the point is, again, in foreign trade, in economic diplomacy, we are behind. And if I again show you comparisons, China's investment in those regions and our investment in those regions, you can really feel. We have recently done one book, India in the 21st Century, Foreign Policy Perspectives in a Complex World, where Sohini also contributed an article. So in that book we have shown statistics and trade data that with these two countries, they are, again, let me remind you, they are advanced economies. With these two countries, Australia and New Zealand, our trade is now a bit down, but hopefully again, we are placing emphasis on these areas. And with these two nations, we can really go miles in terms of foreign trade. They are eager to have more economic relations with India. Let me tell you, India's image has also brightened recently. There is no denying the fact that Indian image abroad has brightened. This is my personal experience. When I used to visit some countries earlier, our passport, our currency, even us as Indians were not given much importance. But later when again I visited those countries again, now I can see brighter pictures. And this is my personal experience. I don't have to go by any data, any propaganda. Now, if you are an Indian, you get some response. So that is another area. So my point is that we must explore the unexplored areas in terms of foreign trade. And let us not forget Africa, a big continent. And let me again tell you that China reached different parts of Africa long back. We were a bit slow in responding, but now we are intruding Africa. I can give you one example. Airtel is doing excellent business in Africa. Almost in all nations of Africa, the Airtel, communication you can find easily. But again, in terms of foreign trade, Africa deserves more attention. 2 or 3 nations in Africa are doing wonderfully well. South Africa is one of them. Nigeria, despite its fame for frauds, Nigerian economy is doing well. And Morocco and a few other nations, they are doing well economically. So we can, not only with these nations, Africa is a big continent, as you know. So we should strengthen our economic diplomacy with Africa. That is another region. I will now put emphasis on another issue. That is India's increased presence in global forums. We are present in global forums. We are one of the founding members of the UNO. We are again almost a founding member of the WTO. But there are some very important international forums where we should be present. We are trying. For example, the Security Council permanent membership. As you know, India has been trying for a Security Council permanent membership, but it won't be easy. Including a new permanent member in the Security Council requires an amendment of the Charter. And an amendment of the Charter again requires unanimity of all 5 permanent members, which is very difficult to achieve. Long back I wrote an article on India's possibilities on the Security Council. So, if India can garner that much of, support, India should be in the Security Council. Whether we accept it or not, Security Council still matters. Because of the veto power. So, India has been trying, and I hope that in the near future we will be able to be a permanent member of the Security Council. Another global forum I would talk about is the Nuclear Suppliers Group, NSG. The Nuclear Suppliers Group is a very powerful forum because it deals with, nuclear related trade globally. And of course, the nuclear weapons. I mean, controlling the nuclear weapons and everything. The nuclear related trade, let me again, many of you know, the faculty members, it is one of the most lucrative areas in trade globally. So a member of the NSG has certain advantages because they decide the rules. They decide which rule we should follow and which we should avoid. So India must be a part of that forum. There are many other forums. India's success story is good. India has established strong links with ASEAN. ASEAN is an economic power bloc in today's world. India has strong links with the European Union, again an economic power bloc. We sometimes jokingly call European Union as a political Lilliput but economic giant. So European Union India has good relations, although again foreign trade must be strengthened. But there are other forums, global forums, to which we must put more importance. We must concentrate more. And I refer to two very important institutions, two very important global forums in today's world. Now let me tell you about another area, that is strengthening our foreign policy establishments. Now, again, if India wants to be a big power, I'm not talking about superpower because in our parlance, these terms are different. Superpower, major power, big power. So if India wants to be a big power or major power or a superpower in the near future, India must strengthen its foreign policy establishments. Any country. History tells us that any country with a strong presence in international politics and economy has a very strong foreign policy establishments. Side by side with domestic policy establishments, this area is crucial because through foreign policy you can secure your national interest. That is important. Now let me tell you, I met one very important ambassador in a conference in Delhi. So they always talk about lesser personnel. Now let me give you an idea. Currently, there are about 850 foreign service officers, IFS, manning 193 Indian posts abroad. Apart from the domestic, issues, you have many foreign policy establishments in your country. You have to man those establishments. But 850, I'm quoting from the MEA sources, Ministry of External Affairs sources. 850 for 193 countries, that means roughly 5 person per embassy or High Commission, which is indeed low. So this area needs more attention, and I am happy that budgetary allocation for MEA, it is going up, because through foreign policy you secure your national interests. Through foreign policy your country's benefits are taken into account. So therefore, side by side with domestic policy establishments, foreign policy establishment must be strengthened. So, as I always do in my class, I will tell you what I have discussed thus far, sort of point structure. There are many students here. So, India's tasks at hand. This is also what we wrote in our book. Let us talk about domestic issues. What are India's tasks at hand for domestic policy issues? Of course, the areas we know: improvement of social infrastructure, health and hygiene, literacy, roads, poverty. Poverty is declining. I have again data of Indian economists and World Bank, IMF. Poverty is declining in India. That is one good thing. But we have to achieve more. And more, I would say, lesser dependence on agriculture, strengthening the manufacturing sector, the areas I put emphasis on, move away from primary producing economy, and to become a global value chain and a manufacturing hub that India should aim at. And of course, increased share of global trade and, bolstering foreign trade. In foreign policy issues or external issues, what I have discussed about maritime security. India must have a very strong maritime security, strong navy. Maritime security does not only mean navy, there are other aspects. But our naval forces must be very strong. And move away from selective engagements in foreign policy and go for global engagements, go for multilateral engagements in foreign policy. It is possible. At one point of time, it was believed that it would be very difficult to spread out throughout the world because that requires a lot of money, your economy, everything, because your embassies should work properly. But now, it is nowadays accepted that India has the power to spread out throughout the world. And that is what I also believe, that hitherto neglected areas must be given more emphasis, must be given, more attention. That is, so you spread out, go for global engagements. Selective engagements, move away from selective engagements. And I identified some important areas in the globe, like Central Asia, like Latin America and the Caribbeans, like Australia, New Zealand, like Africa. So you establish strong economic relations apart from political relations. As we students of IR, international relations, know, there are three crucial areas of foreign policy: political, economic, and security. So you strengthen your economic relations, bolster your foreign trade with these countries. That is important. And increased presence in global forums also. I just identified, for lack of time, I just identified 2 forums: Security Council permanent membership and NSG, Nuclear Suppliers Group. India must be present in these crucial forums. And I also talked about establishing foreign policy establishments, strengthening foreign policy establishments side by side with domestic institutions. Now, about projections and possibilities. I always believe that we should prescribe. Any good science, any good discipline must talk about the future. What may happen in the future. But in traditional political science or in traditional international relations, we sometimes again shied away from talking about the future. Jodi na mele, ami to eto kichu bolllam, jodi bhovishote na mele, ei bhoyta amader kintu kure kure khete. Social science e bishesh kore. Ami onno subject er kotha bolchi na, natural science ba ইকোনমিক্সে এই ব্যাপারগুলো আছে যে আগামী দিনে ইন্ডিয়ান ইকোনমি কোন দিকে যেতে পারে, কিন্তু আমরা উই আদার ব্রাঞ্চেস অফ সোশ্যাল সায়েন্স উই শাইড অ্যাওয়ে ফ্রম প্রেডিক্টিং হোয়াট ক্যান বি দ্য ফিউচার। বাট রিসেন্টলি উই আর ট্রাইং টু do some projections, we are trying to do some predictions, and sometimes they are coming true. Some of our predictions are coming true. Now, let me just tell you about one thing. Long back, when democracy was restored in Afghanistan, I wrote an article in an American journal saying that democracy won't last much in Afghanistan. That article was published some 12-13 years ago, and it has been proved that democracy really did not last in Afghanistan. So some of our predictions are coming true. We are happy, we are satisfied. But again, these are projections. So what I am going to tell you that where do we see India in 2047? I will end by these projections. Now, this is 2023, we are nearing 2023. So, where do we, let us go by phases. Where do we see India in 2030, 2030? Again, I'm referring to one of my writings, but I will just cite the countries who will be on top in 2030, 2030, taking into account all important factors of national power. I talked about the attributes of national power earlier. Taking into account all important ingredients of national power, which countries can dominate or can be in important positions in global politics and economy. We go phase by phase. 2030 first, 7 years from now, not much of a time. So I categorized into four. There are four categories: top powers, major powers, potential major powers, and middle powers. So in 2030, in my opinion, this is a very personal opinion, of course, after some research, USA and China will continue to be there, I mean in the top. But among the major powers, there will be some topsy-turvy. Let me talk about two major powers, traditional major powers, Britain and France. There are talks about, their decreasing importance in global politics and economy. And the rise of, similarly, India and China. So, but still, because of their long tradition, some of them will be in the potential major power category. Now, first top powers, then major powers, Britain, Japan, EU as an economic bloc, European Union, up to 2030. Potential major powers will be India, Germany, Brazil, Indonesia. And there are middle powers. Some countries are really coming up. I talked about Nigeria, I talked about Mexico, South Korea. They are there, I'm not going into details. In 2050, in around 100 years of India's independence, India will be a very strong contender for either the top power tag or the major power tag. I quoted some international agencies' reports at the beginning of my presentation. They are projecting India in a very bright light, and those projections are coming to be true. There were many internal skeptics thinking about whether Indian economy can revert back after COVID-19. But international projections were that Indian economy could revert back to its growth after COVID-19, and that has proved to be true, very true. If you look at the GDP growth rate in 21, 22, 23, we have our, growth rate is good. GDP, that is one measurement. I talked about, per capita income. That is an area we must pay attention to. But India, on the basis of these reports, on the basis of India's performance, I know internal constraints are there. We should overcome those constraints. And as an eternal optimist, I had many ups and downs in my personal life, but I never, relinquished my optimism. I never shied away from my optimism. I look forward. So for my country, I also look forward. I believe in 2047, India has all the strengths to be either a top power, because in economy, India will be the second most powerful economy. So our projections are that way, not something floating in the cloud. No, this is based on some reports. And of course, if India just say misses that tag, the top power tag, India will definitely be a major power by 2047. I see India in that position. Because if you talk about national powers, let me come to, again, attributes of national power. Geography. We are good, strong. Military. I talked about the global firepower report every year. And Indian Navy is currently is in top shape. And other attributes I'm not going into detail. I'm nearing the end of my presentation. So, possibilities, projections and possibilities. Projections are bright. Projections are there, as I categorically said, that India would be either a top power or a major power by 2047. And it is possible. You know, India has one of the largest economically powerful middle class in the world. One of the largest English-speaking population in the world. These things, why these things matter? These things matter a little, although not much. I mean, language, because in foreign investment, in foreign trade, English-speaking population is an advantage. So, I see India in a very bright light. And let me tell you that if India manages its domestic constraints, India will be a top power. India will take its proper place in global politics. Bharat আবার জগৎ সভায় শ্রেষ্ঠ আসন লবে। Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chatterjee, for your insightful lecture. We were all listening. It enriched us in the various facets of foreign policy. Dr. Chatterjee took us through economic growth, foreign policy, diplomacy, maritime security, to India's quest for superpower or major power status in 2030, where we look at ourselves, and to 2047. I'm sure it was very interesting for everyone present here to learn about the intricacies of a subject as vast, as turbulent, and as profound in today's world as international relations, and about our quest for superpower status. As we near the end of today's lecture series now, I would like to call my colleague Dr. Shrimoy Ghosh to please come on stage for the question and answer session.
Thank you, Trijita. Now the floor is open for question and answer session. This session is of half an hour duration. I request the members of the audience to put forward their questions and queries in front of our honorable speaker, Dr. Chatterjee. Please. Sir prefers collecting some of the questions, 3 or 4, and then answer them instead of one by one. So I request you to please put forward your questions. He will take some questions together and then we'll start answering. Yes, please.
Please come forward. Please come forward.
বাংলায় বলছি স্যার, খুব সুন্দর লাগলো। আমি কেমিস্ট্রি স্টুডেন্ট, তা সত্ত্বেও আপনার লেকচার অদ্ভুত লাগলো আমার। খুব সুন্দরভাবে আপনি ডিসকাশন করলেন। ইন্টারন্যাল রিলেশন জিনিসটা কি সত্যি সত্যি একটা নতুন দিক আমার কাছে মনে হয়। তো খুব ব্রাইটেন লেকচার, এবং আগামী দিনের যে ভবিষ্যৎ আপনি বললেন ইন্ডিয়ার পক্ষে আমরা থাকুন, অবশ্যই আমাদের ছাত্রীরা থাকবেন, তারা এটা নিশ্চয়ই এনজয় করবেন ভবিষ্যতে। শুধু স্যার শেষে আপনি একটা টার্ম ইউজ করলেন, সেটা হচ্ছে ডোমেস্টিক কনস্ট্রেন্টস। এই টার্মটা কি ঠিক স্পষ্ট হলো না। এটা কি পপুলেশন, ইন্ডিয়ার পপুলেশন বা ইন্ডিয়ার রিলিজিয়াস সিচুয়েশন, এই জিনিসগুলো কি? ডোমেস্টিক কনস্ট্রেন্ট বলতে ঠিক কি বললেন স্যার, এটা যদি একটু বলেন।
Sir, please introduce yourself.
I am Mustafizur Rahman, faculty of Department of Chemistry. Thank you, sir.
Sir, once it in written form, if possible, I request you to write down your questions and hand it over to me. The volunteers, please come forward and collect the questions. First, please go to sir and collect his question.
Dr. Rahman's question is, what does the speaker mean by domestic constraints?
What does the speaker mean?
Domestic constraints.
হ্যাঁ, ভলেন্টিয়ার্সরা তাহলে আমি তাহলে লিখে নিয়ে করছি।
Where are the volunteers?
Thank you for your question. Now, when I talked about domestic constraints, I referred to, improving the social infrastructure. Like, we all know about poverty, illiteracy, those things are there, and the road conditions. But again, we have come a long way from what we have seen earlier, about our roads, about, I talked about the decline of poverty as well. So by domestic constraints, I mean, and of course one may talk about, political situation at all time, political volatility or political instability. But India is more stable than many other countries. India is more stable than many of its neighbors and many other countries in West Asia, in other parts of the globe. So basically, by domestic constraints, I wanted to mean what we call socio-economic infrastructure. We must pay more attention to these socio-economic infrastructures.
So, I encourage our students to ask questions because we have Dr. Chatterjee, an eminent political scientist with us. Please feel free to ask questions. Yes, over there.
Please come forward. Come forward.
While I will put question, I request our students to please introduce yourself.
First, you introduce yourself and then put the question.
So good afternoon everyone. This is Gargi Chatterjee from PG Semester 1 Political Science. Good afternoon sir. Thank you for such an inspiring and enlightening lecture. My question is, according to the annual survey of industries, only 20% of women are said to have been involved in the organized sector in the manufacturing sector of India, a point that you have heavily emphasized on. So my question as a student of a women's college is, what measures would you suggest to spike these numbers up, and what measures are there so that not only the women workforce is inspired to work, but their men counterparts also honor their work over there. Thank you.
So,
Would you please go closer to the stage so that you can hear properly? I think he hasn't heard it properly. Go closer to the stage.
Yeah, sorry I couldn't hear properly. But you talked about any survey or 20% of women. Now, if you tell me women's literacy rate is going up, and there are many surveys, if you visit those, websites, there are many surveys about improvement of women in different sectors. What we talk about really, I can tell you, that wage level, which is a really always in India there is a discrepancy about the wage level of male and female workers. That area is crucial. The wage level of the female, that must, be increased. And I personally believe, although, yes, women are lagging behind in India, but situations are improving. And the half of the population, if they can't advance, the nation can't advance. So we can talk outside later. I will tell you, because we don't have much time, I tell you about some data, some websites where you can find about women's progress in this direction.
Sir, good afternoon. I'm from microbiology department. I'm faculty there. I would like to ask you, you said that India is more of a service provider and needs to become a producer. And you also said that India needs to move away from being an agricultural country only. So what are the fields in which India can become a producer by 2047? What are the fields in which India can become a producer by 2047? This is my question.
Well, the fields, you talked about the fields in 2047, India can achieve or India can progress.
মানে কোন সেক্টরে ভারতবর্ষ, মানে আপনি বললেন না যে আমরা প্রাইমারিলি এগ্রিকালচার থেকে যদি মুভ করতে পারি, তাহলে কি কি ধরনের বিজনেস আমরা ডেভেলপ করতে পারি, সেইটাই আমি জানতে চাইছি। মানে কি ম্যানুফ্যাকচারিং বা কি প্রোডাকশনে ইন্ডিয়া যেতে পারে, কারণ যাতে আমরা এগ্রিকালচার থেকে আর কি মানে আরো বড় প্রডিউসার হিসেবে পৃথিবীতে ইমার্জ করতে পারি, সেটাই আমার প্রশ্ন।
I would say there are several fields for Indian women to progress and Indian women to achieve something. Let's say not only in the service sector. I talked about, self-help groups. They are doing well. That is an area for women to achieve something really great. If I can understand you properly, self-help groups or
not just women.
You right.
আচ্ছা যাদের প্রশ্ন আছে why don't they go to the auditorium?
I think it's better those who want to ask the question, instead of using hand mic, please come at the podium and put forward your question. I think that will be convenient to conduct this question and answer session. Please.
My question is, what are the trade or manufacturing fields in which India can make progress so that they can become a leading producer in the world, apart from agriculture? No, what are the fields in which India can manufacture or produce? মানে কি ধরনের বিজনেস বা কি ধরনের ইন্ডাস্ট্রিয়াল ডেভেলপমেন্টে ইন্ডিয়া বেটার করবে অ্যাপার্ট ফ্রম এগ্রিকালচার, সেটাই জানতে চাইছি।
Now this is a very, very good question. Yeah, I couldn't hear you properly. This is a very good question. The point is, what are the trade or manufacturing or industrial fields you want to see India can become a leading power? Now, in trade, I started by talking about, self-help groups. And let me tell you that I worked in some colleges outside Kolkata, outside the city of Kolkata. And several self-help groups, if you think they are manufacturing, they are doing well. And they are manufacturing, homemade products that way. I will come to other areas, industrial fields I will come. And, this type of, say, self-help groups should be encouraged, and women must be allowed, if you talk about women, to start industries. I mean, we come across women in the urban areas who are very successful entrepreneurs. But let us think about the whole country. There are success stories of women in different industrial areas, like, garments. In garments industry, women are doing wonderfully well in Uttar Pradesh, in some areas of, Bihar, Jharkhand, and of course in neighboring Bangladesh, but we are talking about India. So in garments industry, they can do well. And newer in software, they are doing well. In computer technologies, I mean mostly in software and sometimes in hardware, they are doing well. So these are the new emerging areas where especially Indian women, let us forget about traditional areas. Garment is of course a traditional area and very, very important. But in some other areas, as I said, in software or in computer technology, in telecommunications, they are setting up, and nowadays startups. Startups have come up. So, and many women, they have become successful in startups. So that is areas, these are the areas. Industry, if you talk about industry, I would suggest that there are areas like software, like computer technology. These areas should be given, more, and food and garment startups. Many startups have come on food, So these are the areas we can move ahead. I hope I could answer your question. More we can talk always outside. Yes.
স্যার, আমি ইপসিতা, আমি স্ট্যাটিস্টিক্স পড়াই। আমার একটা প্রশ্ন ছিল, সেটা হচ্ছে যে আপনি যখন অমৃতকাল বলতে যেটা বোঝাচ্ছেন, যদি আমি এটিমোলজিক্যালি দেখি, সেটা তো একটা হিস্টোরিক্যাল ডেভেলপমেন্টের জায়গাতেই নিয়ে যাচ্ছে, মানে এটা একটা জার্নি টুয়ার্ডস গোল্ডেন এজ। এবার আমার যেটা প্রশ্ন সেটা হচ্ছে যে এটা তো একটা মাল্টিফেসেটেড ডেভেলপমেন্টের কথাও বলছে, তার সাথে আপনি যেটা মুস্তাফিজুদ্দা যেটা আপনাকে জিজ্ঞেস করলো যে সোশ্যাল কনস্ট্রেন্ট বলতে কি, মানে সেটা আপনি বললেন, স্পেসিফাই করলেন যে সোশ্যাল ইকোনমিক কনস্ট্রেন্ট। তো সোশ্যাল ইকোনমিক কনস্ট্রেন্ট বলতে ধরুন আমাদের মধ্যে তো আমরা পরস্পর, মানে কন্ট্রাডিক্টরি কিছু ডেটা আছে, মানে ধরুন হাঙ্গারি ইন্ডেক্সে ভারতের জায়গা, বা ইউএন যেটা বলছে যে প্রতি 4 জন ভারতীয়র মধ্যে 3 জন ভারতীয় না খেয়ে থাকে। তার সাথে মানে আমার যেটা প্রশ্ন সেটা হচ্ছে যে এই সোশ্যাল ইকোনমিক যে কনস্ট্রেন্টস, এটা দূর করতে মানে গভর্নমেন্টের কী রোল থাকতে পারে, পাবলিক পলিসির কী রোল থাকতে পারে, বা পলিটিক্যালি এটাকে কীভাবে কমব্যাট করা যেতে পারে, যাতে করে ইফ নট টু ডিসঅ্যাপিয়ার বাট টু ডিক্রিজ দ্য সোশ্যাল ইকোনমিক ডিসপ্যারিটি। এইটা আমার প্রশ্ন। কেননা ঠিক আছে।
What can we do to combat the rise of China in the future, Sharonna? So, yes, it is a very great foreign policy challenge. I was about to talk about China. We, in international relations, we often talk about how we can combat China, because China is progressing well. Now,